So tonight we're going to go through a bunch of different things, a bunch of small little things, and then we'll do a string Colle demo, and the demo portion of the evening. Hopefully there's time for you guys to work.
A shin Colle?
Shin Colle. Basically that means gluing a thin piece of paper down to a thicker piece of paper.
Okay.
It sounds nicer tonight.
Sounds exotic.
It is. So I'll go through a few things. Got everything written down.
This glycerin you can buy anywhere? Or?
Drugstore. Yeah, drugstore carries glycerin. We'll double check after. My product container. But yeah, it'll keep it a little bit wet for a little bit longer.
Okay.
So we try to use those things up. So I guess we'll start at the beginning.
Does anyone find this music so loud a bit though? Like I can't hear very well.
Oh, do you want to turn it down?
Just a bit?
Just a bit?
Because I can't hear very.
Hey, Kathleen, would you mind if we turn down the music bit down? Just a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit?
no worries.
Cool.
There's your profile.
So first thing I'll talk about is how to transfer an image onto your block. So last time we just we drew directly onto the block, and that's totally fine. But there's different ways to transfer your image onto the block. Indirectly, I guess. First method.
Just tracing paper.
Yeah, tracing paper. So the first method is making your own, basically your own carbon paper using chalk or Conte. So I have Conte here. I have a little bit of chocolate, whichever you prefer. This one's pretty straightforward. Just grab a piece of newsprint or a piece of tracing paper, and then you just want to rub the back. Do you want to make it out for Nuit Blanche? Or check that right?
Saw some of it on Broadway.
Yeah? It's that moon I wanted to see when I was busy.
Yeah.
Oh, the moon was cool.
Yeah.
My niece went and she said there were so many kids.
There were a lot of kids.
I said way too many kids.
That's good.
I saw a video of the steamroller. Keitha McLaughlin had posted her
yeah.
Besbro
Yeah.
piece. Yeah. So how did that go with the steamroller?
It was really fun. It was crazy. I think 150 people went through, and we were just
Had prints
yeah,
done?
we're printing. Yeah.
That's
I scheduled an hour and a half shifts for people. We stayed there all night. We were just like one person. She was rolling blocks for 4 hours, just straight. Just like I kept on asking if she wanted a break. She's like, "Nope, this is fun. I'm going." And then at 11, she's like, "I got to go home." I'm like, yeah.
So you were up all night. Like,
Yeah, we were there from like 6 till midnight. After midnight, we were cleaning up and stuff. So it was fun. It was exhausting, but it was really fun. Good turnout.
What nice weather.
Very nice weather. I was worried it was going to rain. There was almost like a threat of rain there. So anyways, yeah, rub the back of the piece of newsprint. Put that down on your block. This works best if you stain your block. And then you could take your drawing or photo and then trace it. So the pencil just, or a pen, a little bit of pressure. This way you can kind of work on your drawing on paper first or work from a photo.
Someone need and reverse her picture. That's really. Oh no.
So I don't know if you can see that or not, but you can see the lines there. So I'll do it here. Just a quick way to transfer an image. So you can work out your drawing on paper first and then transfer it. It's a little messy, but it's not too bad. We use red oxide powder at the university, It's like this, but in powder form, it's really, really, really messy. So it's a little bit better. You can also use chalk. That works as well. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to actually, you can take a photocopied image and transfer it onto your block. So it could be a photo. Again, you can take a drawing and photocopy it, and then you can transfer it onto your block. It has to be a photocopy or a print done on a laser printer. So it has to be toner. It can't be inkjet. So I know many people have laser printers here. I don't know if we have one. I keep on asking. I always forget if we do have one or not here. I'll ask. If not, you can go to Staples, get something photocopied. Or before class, we have a laser printer at school, at work, so if you send me an image or file, I can print it out for you and bring it with me, and you can transfer an image.
What if you have a picture with a whole bunch of details? Like, I mean, how do you do that? Like, I mean, it's hard to
carve or
like
or
trace.
Trace? Either carefully trace or else you transfer, and I'll show you.
Okay.
You can see the bird here. So again, yeah, toner. Fresher the better. Within a couple of hours is great. It works better. Also, the type of paper matters as well. Use the cheapest paper as possible. Some photocopy places use a higher quality paper to make the photocopy look good, but it kind of locks in the toner and it doesn't transfer as well. So, like, whatever the cheapest you can get. Also, images that tend to be more high contrast work better, generally. In this case, you don't have to worry about reversing it on the photocopy. We're going to put it face down, and when we do the transfer, it's going to reverse for you. So on the bird, I wrote up chirp, so there's some text there. And it's the right way. You can see it. So that goes face down. What we're going to use is oil of wintergreen.
Oh.
Wintergreen oil.
Yeah.
Where do you get that? Just like, is that like the essential oil wintergreen?
Yeah, it's an essential oil.
Okay.
So some drugstores have it.
Yeah.
Some kind of health foodie stores will have it, or you can order it online. There's that place downtown or on 20th, that bulk food place. It closed down now, but it used to sell it by.
Yeah.
You just bring a bottle and fill it up, kind of thing. Just really nice. Sad that it closed down.
I'm so sad it closed down. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
So it replaces harsher chemicals. You could use like a paint thinner, or not paint thinner, like a lacquer thinner, or acetone, or xylene, all of which are really terrible for you. This is a bit better for you. So I'm just tearing it down so I have a better idea where to place it on my block. So then put some on a rag. It has a nice minty smell.
You clear your senses while you do it.
It's true, especially if you have like a class of like 30 students doing this all at once. Even though it does smell nice. Kind of overwhelming. If you want to, you can tape it down so it doesn't move while you're doing this. Bad idea. And then you rub the back of it.
You let it sit for a while, or it
Not
doesn't
really, so kind of like this.
Ooh.
It's almost like it'll be translucent. You can't put too much on. If you put too much on, then the toner gets kind of spreads out. You get kind of a blob instead of an image. If you put too little, then not enough of it transfers. So.
And you don't have to worry about reversing in that circumstance then.
Pardon me?
You don't have to worry about reversing then.
So it's already reversed. It's already face down here. I can show you after. And then you can take some wax paper. Use a spoon. So you want to apply pressure to the back? Either with a spoon or bearing. Or if you have a press. see it transferred onto here.
Oh,
And
that's
if you come up close, you can see the chirp is reversed. So the reverse does work. You can see the original. I put a little too much there, but not too bad. So if you have a photograph and you don't want to draw it, then you can transfer it and start carving. I like it because, like with this stuff, it does rub off a little bit. This stuff, when it's dry, it won't come off, so you can work with it. So it's kind of nice. So I tend to do a lot of my work, and I'll transfer, whether it's a drawing or a photograph.
Patrick, what's the difference between, just while you've got that, between these two?
Color, mostly.
Mostly color?
Yeah, I don't think there's a difference in carving.
You don't think, okay?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Do you find one softer than
It
the other?
didn't like this
A little bit harder?
as much as
Okay.
the one we did
What
the
kind
other
is that?
day.
The brown kind.
I don't know, he had them here.
Right.
Last week. It just seemed like it. This little-
I actually used the hairdryer on it.
Oh.
It does work.
Okay.
But you have to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right, that's a great idea. Just to soften it.
I didn't know that, how well it works.
That's awesome.
Hair dryer works, or if you have a heating mat for seeds,
Right,
seeds,
yes, yes,
that works
yes, you
really well.
mentioned that, right.
Yeah, heating your lino will make it softer and easier to work with.
Can you glue the image onto a block and then carve?
Yeah, that's another way to do it. Old master prints were done that way. They draw on a thin piece of paper and then glue it down and then carve through the paper and then.
Oh,
My copies are ancient,
Okay.
not rigid.
Well, we'll see what I have here or not. Again, if you want, I can take your images and photocopy them for you. If you want to try this photocopy process, but it does work quite well. And then you just let it dry for a few minutes. If you have a fan, it'll dry faster.
And then you would carve out the light ones.
Yeah, then you
Right
go ahead and
areas.
do your carving. So that's just a way to get your image onto your block. That's transferring. And I have oil wintergreen here, so if you want to borrow some, please do. I've got lots, and I got Conte as well, so you don't have to go and buy that. Along with the spoon that we used last week, I have a couple of other tools that we can use. We have a Baron. So I don't know if anyone had a Baron last week. Anyone had one? Yeah. So you have that. So a Baron is a traditional tool to print by hand. They come in different qualities, I guess. This one's not too bad. It's plastic, but it has little tiny bumps, and that helps deliver pressure onto your block. That doesn't. That's smooth. You get traditional ones are wrapped in bamboo,
Okay.
and they're quite nice. They're really expensive.
How much are they?
I think the ones you get from McLean's is like over $1,000.
What?
They're beautiful. They're handmade, and they're like
I
the way
think
they're
I would
wrapped
just use
and
my
stuff.
plastic, thank you.
Yeah, they're one. I've never used one, but it looks really nice. There's also one that they use ball bearings instead of like these little plastic bumps, and that works really well. I have one at home that I borrowed. I didn't want to bring it, but this is not mine. But that's a possibility too. This one was cheap. I got it from Etsy. I think it was about $30. So if you want to try a Baron, you can try that instead of a spoon. Spoon works great though. The Baron works as well. Another option is a toothpick Baron. Yeah. So a local printmaker, Nick Semnoff, he went to Japan. Yeah. He passed away last year. He went to Japan and he visited a studio of a master printer. And this is what a master printer used for printing by hand. They're bamboo toothpicks. And each point delivers pressure to the back of the print.
Doesn't break the paper?
No, so to make one, basically you get bamboo toothpicks, usually from like an Asian supermarket. Don't get wooden ones, they're not as strong. And they come in conveniently in a container like this. So that's what you're going to use to grip it. You take the toothpicks out and you put some sort of glue in the bottom, so an epoxy or silicone or something. Shove the toothpicks back in, and then once the glue dries, you lightly sand the top. So it's not a sharp point, but still it's a point, it's not sharp. And then you rub the back So. So I'll use the toothpick brand to print tonight, demonstrate it, but those are two other options for hand printing. Beyond that, I mean, I've seen people use their hands and actually try to print. It works okay, but traditionally the brand has been used along with the spoon.
Is that a toothpick one that you made?
Yep, that's one I made. Jean made a bunch last time, so. You can get, if you wanted to, you can get like a sono tube. I've seen people get larger cardboard tubes and they'll put toothpicks in there to get a bigger burn. It might get a little bit hard to print though, because so try to keep it hand-sized. All right. Do you have any questions so far? No? Transfer that. Anything from last week, like the registration sheet? Was that pretty clear, or is that forgotten?
No, that's good.
Good. I'll go through
Yeah.
again when we're doing sheet play. All right. So I'll print one with the toothpick brand. I'm gonna print my chicken with a suit. I have a friend who he raised chickens in his backyard, but you're not allowed to. And he got caught, so I suggested dressing up in suits and passing them off as businessmen.
That's awesome.
So
Did you get to keep the chickens? Did you find a way?
no, he had to give them away. So it's too bad. I think his neighbors. I don't know who reported him because he was giving eggs to his neighbors to, you know. So,
So how much extent, like, cause I have this old ink and some, I know other people have old ink.
Yeah.
How much of the extender do you put in when you do this your stuff?
Like the glycerin or the
Yeah.
a little bit of like probably the amount that you're gonna use, maybe 1/4 teaspoon. Start off with that.
Oh, okay, not very much then.
No. And then see how it goes. You need to add a little bit more. If you add too much, then the ink gets too thin and too loose, and it can cause problems when you're printing. So I'll use this. I'll also print one with wet paper. So last class we printed with dry paper, and usually that works fine. But some people like to print with wet paper or dampened paper, and that works for the washi, which I'm going to use now, and it also works with the European papers, the cotton rag paper. The idea behind wettening your paper is that it opens up the fibers of the paper more. It also makes the paper more malleable, more flexible, so it can press into the block better. For relief printing, you don't need as much pressure as you do for other types of printmaking, like etching or engraving. You need a lot of pressure, so you always have to print with wet paper. With relief, it's sort of optional. If you can print dry, it's nice because that's an extra step you don't have to do, wet your paper. But some people find that you get a better quality print if you wet your paper. So I'll show you how to do that.
Sorry, I missed that. Which one do you always have to use wet paper for?
Etching or engraving. So we'll do a little bit of dry point, which is close to that. A couple of weeks. So I'm gonna try a different color this time. Just because I want to. Just a review for color or inking. So you want to make a ribbon of ink like that. Then want to dip your roller into that and then roll it out. And then as you roll.
You make it the size of what your brayer would be for?
Yeah, so I usually don't go much beyond the width of the brayer.
Okay.
I've seen students though that go the length of the table. It doesn't really do anything, and it's just more cleanup. it thins out your ink, then you have to use more ink to make your palette of ink thick enough to ink properly, so it serves no purpose. I meant to get enthusiastic to get into it, and they just forget. So print up here. So if you want to, you can put a piece of drawer liner underneath. But make sure you have a piece of mylar or at least newsprint underneath to keep the tables clean. So in terms of the brayers and rollers, we kind of talked a little bit about sizes and types. What we have here at Hues, I think the biggest is the 6-inch. And it works fine for if you're printing with opaque colors. You just kind of fan it out like I'm doing, in different directions. It's okay. For transparent colors, it can be a bit of an issue, because the more transparent the ink is, the more you'll see the roller marks. So then you just have to be kind of, I've done it with a smaller roller, you just have to kind of finesse it and kind of fan it out as you print, or ink up and then print. If you really get into printmaking and relief printing, you can buy rollers. So instead of a brayer like this with a handle, a roller basically looks like a roller used for baking, but it's made out of rubber. And they can get different widths. You can get rollers that are that wide in diameter by this big. We have some at the university, and they're a pain to roll up, but if you're doing with giant blocks, you can use them for that. I have one at home that's about that big. And I use that quite a bit. So they are quite expensive, though.
Where do you get that? Where do you get them?
I got mine actually from a print shop that was closing down in BC, so I was lucky, got it cheaper. To get a new one, there's different companies, Takish Press, out of New Mexico. Yeah.
But for just hand printing, like little pieces.
Little pieces, you're fine with a small roller on the whole, but Takish Press also sells really nice brayers. They're like deluxe brayers, they're thicker metal and nicer rubber. Again, more expensive, but these ones are fine. Maybe we could do a grant writing class, and then we can all apply to get nice rollers. I don't want to. How do I make this happen?
I'm on the film side, but
It's almost the same. It's not the same thing at all. Alright, I'm going to take my washi and I'm going to wet it. Usually I do it away from my ink, but I got the camera on, so I'm just going to go ahead and spray it.
is that just newsprint that you're using right now?
Well, this is the Japanese paper.
That's the all it is?
Yep.
Okay.
So for wetting your paper, if you do prints, if it's washi, like this thin paper, you can kind of spray as you go. It doesn't take very much water to spray it. It's very thin paper.
I have rice paper at home. Is that the same thing as that?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. Rice paper is kind of a slang term for paper from Asia. It's probably not made from rice,
No,
but yeah.
I use it for my ink class, so.
Yeah. So when you're printing with wet paper, you don't want it sopping wet. So after you mist it, then you can let it dry with some newsprint. So you just want it damp. So when I say wet paper, I mean damp paper. If it's too wet, then the water can reject the ink, because the ink it's a soy-based ink, so there's oil in there, and if there's too much water, the oil and the water will reject each other. And basically, you just put it on top, and then print it. For the washi, I like to put a piece of newsprint because the ink is going to come through. And I'm going to use toothpick bearing. So use a toothpick bearing. I get a piece of mylar, and then I put a little bit of oil on top. You can use vegetable oil, like this.
Why do you need oil?
It makes it slide easier on the mylar.
Oh,
Otherwise, this one's not too bad. This one's already got a bunch of oil in here, but I find a little bit of oil helps it glide a little bit easier. You can use vegetable oil. It does tend to get into the bamboo toothpicks after a while. It gets kind of gunky. You can use something like this, silicone oil, and that doesn't gunk up in your brayer. This I got from Michael's. It was like $4. That wasn't that bad. That ball bearing I was talking about, they recommend using this because the ball bearings are really fine, and if you use vegetable oil, you'll kind of damage it. It takes a lot of work to. So wetting the paper, hopefully it doesn't bleed. It might be bleeding. No, actually it's not bad. Wetting the paper might be good, especially good for if you're doing flats of color. Sometimes the dry paper just doesn't want to pick up the color as well as a dampened piece of paper. A little bit of bleeding, but.
Cool. So how do you avoid the ink running or bleeding?
Make the paper a little bit drier.
Okay.
So kind of better with
Cool. How long does that take to dry?
the paper. Not very long. It's this thin paper. With
Any
the-
ill effects to using a hairdryer on it?
It'll wrinkle
Yeah.
pretty quickly. That's the other thing with printing with wet paper is that you'll have to flatten your prints because when the paper dries, if you just leave it out or use a hairdryer, it tends to get all wavy and wrinkly. So then you'd have to, after you finish printing, put it in between some newsprint and then weigh it down, either with big heavy books or boards or something like that to flatten it. So wet paper is an option. If you can get away with using dry paper, I guess it saves you time. But if you find that, like, especially with large areas of color or black, they're not getting as solid as you want, you might try dampening your paper, and then you'll have to go through blotting it and drying it after.
The stuff we did the pictures last week. I was testing it this week. It takes a long time to dry.
Surprisingly, for being a water-based ink, yes.
And even the lino, like, it was tacky after days.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going, wow, this is like,
So if you put that between
So newsprint,
some books,
Yeah.
they will take a long time to dry.
they will, yeah.
But when it's kind of a bit dry, you could probably take it out to air dry.
At the university, we have boards that are they're not solid. They're kind of a chipboard that allows air to come through. So. That is an option if you wish to. For the toothpick Baron, if you use Mylar, just keep track on which side is the oil side. It'll happen. I've probably done it a couple times myself. You flip the Mylar down and there'll be a bunch of oil on the back of your paper. So if you want to, it's not a bad idea to write oil side on one side. Just so you know which side is which.
if you don't do the wet on the thing, will it still print nicely?
Yeah, we can try one if you want. You can see the difference. I don't know if I have the right side of washi paper now. And you can have a piece of regular paper. Let's try some cutlery. It depends on your image too. Again, if you have solid areas of color or black, you might try the wetting the paper. We had a student last term, last class, she was trying to do a print and she was having problems printing it dry, and then she dampened her paper and it printed really nicely. She Like I saw the blues colors.
Not bad.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a lot of detail. How long did it take you to?
Turn.
Yeah,
I don't know.
like an hour or two
Hmm.
for you?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
us,
us.
yeah.
12. A day, 2 hands and some Advil. Yeah.
At some point, we'll try a press out.
Yeah.
Feel the difference. Anyways, yeah, different ways to print. Wet or dry paper. That's all good. Do this stuff first, then we'll finish off the Shinkai. Just for your own information, I guess we're using it for the suite as well. Learn how to sign and edition your prints. So typically you sign or edition your print on the bottom underneath your image. Doesn't always have to be the case. If your image is a bleed print, meaning that there's no margins, there's no place to sign it, then you can always sign the back. Or if you don't want to put your signature title on the front, you feel like it wrecks the image, you can do it on the back. I've seen people do it on this side for some reason. You always want to use pencil. If you don't have a pencil, I have one here. Don't use marker. No. It doesn't look very nice and it's not archival. So over time the marker will fade. Pencil is more archival. So the ones you'll use the most are the first one here, the 1/4. So 1 means the specific number for the print, and the 4 is the total number of prints in the edition. So there'll be 4 prints that are exactly the same as this, and you just number the 1, 2, 3, or 4. The order, it really depends on the artist. Some artists are very particular, and that first print will be 1, and the second print will be 2, and so forth. Some will wait until they finish printing, and then they'll just number them at random. So some artists, bad practice is to put your better prints at the beginning. So 1 and 2 are really good, and maybe 3 and 4 are okay. That's not really great. They should be as close to each other as possible. But that's what you'll use the most. The other ones are for your information. So artist proof. Can mean a couple of things. Usually the artist will set aside a certain number of the edition for their own collection. So if you do happen to get an artist proof, it's probably more valuable because it's from the artist's personal collection. It'll also refer to a unique print within the edition. So artist proof means maybe they changed the color but used the same block, or did some hand drawing, or changed the paper. That would be an artist proof as well. So that's A over P. State proof is a print in progress. So it's like a proof or a rough copy. And then you can number them state proof 1, 2, 3, 4 until you get to your final edition. It's nice to keep if you can remember doing that. I like to do state proofs. Experimental proof and varied edition, similar to that second artist proof, where the artist has made some changes. That's different from the rest of the prints in the edition. So hand coloring, different paper, different color of ink, etc. Or you added a different medium to the print, and that's called an experimental proof or a varied edition. So usually the title goes in the center, and then your name goes on the right, and the edition number goes on the left. When I was in school, we put our edition number in the center for some reason. I don't know why, but that's the way I was taught. But so the order doesn't matter too much, but typically name's in the middle, or title goes in the center, and then the name and the edition number on either side. And pencil. The last one is bon intérêt, forgive my French, or BAT. So it literally means best pulled. So this is a traditional practice to do an edition. So as you're printing, the first print that you pull on good paper, that's the print, everything's perfect, the details all there, it's nicely inked up. That becomes your bon intérêt, or BAT. And then you take that print and you put it next to the press or your printing area, and every time you pull the print, you compare that to the BAT. And if it's equal or better quality than BAT, then you set it aside, that becomes part of your edition. If it's not, then you put it in a different pile. And that's how you come up with your edition. So that's a very traditional way to do an edition. So you can do it that way, or else you can print a whole bunch, and then after, figure which ones are good or bad after. This is maybe a little bit more organized.
So when you have the BAT, do you number that, or you put BAT in the?
It really depends on the artist. Some people include the BAT in their edition. So they'll 1 out of 4 and they'll write BAT,
Okay.
or else they have that separate and just call it BAT on its own. So it really depends. If you go online, there's probably dozens of different ways to edition. This is kind of a basic, general description of how to do that. So keep that in mind as you're working through your suite, your prints. All right, we're done for time. Next thing I'll show you is how to sharpen your tools. Working with lino, so it shouldn't be too bad for sharpening your tools. If you're working with something like wood, you want to use sharp tools. So what I like to use as I'm working is this green stick. So it's a green honing compound that you get from Lee Valley. So it's a honing compound. They use it for sharpening wheels.
They're closed right now. They're closed right now.
I know. They could reopen in Lawson Heights Mall.
No, they just said Lawson Heights.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's in the mall. Yeah.
So that comes like that, like in a
Stick? Yep. So some of these tools are kind of hard to sharpen, especially U-gouges because it's a curved blade. I do have a sharpening stone. I don't have it here. But if your blades are really dull, then I go to a whetstone. That takes a bit of finesse, and you have to keep a constant angle and move the blade around and stuff like that. So if you can, the best way to keep your tools sharp is sharpen them as you go. Don't carve for like a month and then you can't like do anything with them and then try to sharpen them because they'll take a lot of work. If you can sharpen as you go, it's a lot better. And that's what this is good for. So So what I have here is a piece of wood that's been gouged out a whole lot. So what I do is I find a gouge that's the same size as my tool. So this one, my big U gouge, find it here. Then I want to take my tool and I want to rub inside that gouge. It takes a bit of work, especially for the table that shakes.
What kind of board is that? Does it matter?
Pardon me?
What kind of board is that? Does it matter?
Just this piece of bolted birch that I use for like
Right.
carving wood blocks. It doesn't really matter too much. Just grab a piece of hat on hand. And then you want to take your tool and then hold it at the angle that you're going to cut the wood or lino. And you just go back and forth. And what will happen is the silicone that's in the green stuff, the honing compound, will abrade the metal and sharpen it. You can see it goes kind of gray. That's the metal coming off the tool. So this works great as you go along. So you might be cutting for a while, maybe it's a little bit dull. Then you can do a quick sharpen like this and you're good to go. So, so with the U-gouge, when you sharpen the outside, what happens is there's a tiny little microscopic burr that forms, a little burr of metal. So that curls around on the inside of the blade. So after you sharpen it, if you go to start to cut, you might notice that it's quite dull. So you need to do the same thing on the inside. So usually what I do is I'll rub some compound on a chopstick and then kind of rub the inside a little bit. The burr doesn't take much to take off. So that's what I do. Some people, when they finish sharpening their tool this way, they'll take their tool and smack it a few times, and that's enough to knock off the burr. Or else you can use a fine grit sandpaper, like a 600 grit sandpaper, and just lightly sand the inside. And then the tool should be nice and sharp. Bee Valley also sells this. I've used that a little bit.
Do you know how to use it? Because I've got one of those.
I've kind of used it. Maybe I'm just used to using this. I'm stubborn, but.
What, the same technique? Just rub the green stuff, or how do
Yep.
you use the?
This one has a leather strop.
Right. How do you use that thing?
Same thing, idea. You want to rub. This is the honing compound that comes with it. I think it's pretty much the same stuff as the red or the green. Pardon me. It might be a different grit or coarseness, but this is what it comes with. I've played around with it. I prefer the wood. But it's the same idea, except with this, you can't gouge, you can't cut, you'll,
Sides. Yeah.
yeah, so you kind of have to pull it towards you. It also comes with a board with different shapes on it, so you can do the inside.
So you just rub it down with the stick and
Yep.
go like that. Okay.
So, but with the strap, basically you have to kind of go and, you can't go against it, otherwise it'll cut through the leather. I'm partial to the wood, but
Yeah.
you can play around with it. I've had students use it and they really love it, so, you know,
Different folks.
different folks, different folks. So I have gouges for each of the shapes here, a V gouge and the different sizes of U gouges, so, and I'll keep this here, so if you need to sharpen your tools, you can. But sharper tools make everything easier to work with.
Well, if you have these ones, you just you get rid of the ends, right?
Those the speedball ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get new blades, or you can sharpen them too. So, yeah, that's the nice thing about those. You get new blades and just put them on. All right, I think that's all the basic stuff I want to cover. Yes, I think so. So now for the main event, the Colle.
So how do you spell that fancy word?
CHIN,
Mm-hmm.
Colle. Shinkolle. I'm gonna move some stuff. I could do it over there, but then I have to move the camera and, you know. I have to put one other piece on my arm too. So, I'm just gonna transfer that. Got more stuff after, but that's okay. So Shinkolle is basically, like I said, gluing a thin piece of paper onto a thicker piece of paper. So the washi that we use, it prints really well, but it's quite thin and it tends to fold and crease quite easily. Some artists, they like just printing on the washi paper and that's it. They don't Shinkolle. But some artists will Shinkolle to give extra strength to the paper, for the print. It also creates a nice color change. You see the difference between the color of the washi against the white of the paper. So it looks quite nice when you're finished. Oh, I do it right. So you'll need a print. So first thing you want to do is print on the washi paper, and you want to make sure the ink is dry. So you notice how long it takes for the ink to dry. You really want to make sure it's dry. So you can't print and then Shinkolle right after. You can't even do it the day after. I'd probably give it a few days. Because you might end up damaging your print if you try to Shinkolle right away. So make sure it's dry. I'd probably say 3 or 4 days. Or how long it takes for the ink to dry. But make sure it's good and dry. Don't rush that step. For the backing paper, you'll need cotton rag paper, so you can't use cheap paper. So the Cougar cover or Lynx cover we were using before, you can't use that because there's too much glue or sizing in the paper, and it interferes with the glue that we'd be using for the Shinkolle. You also don't want to use a Stonehenge. So Stonehenge is kind of like entry-level rag paper or cotton paper. It's good to print on. I don't mind it, but it's not good for Shinkolle. There is some sizing in it, and again, it doesn't really work that well for Shinkolle. So you're going to have to get expensive paper. So BFK Reeves or Somerset satin is what I'd recommend. And I have Somerset here.
And how did you cut that? Did you just cut it the way you want a raw edge on it?
You can, it's up to you. Or you can, yeah, you with a knife or just with the tear bar or ruler, you tear your paper. And keep in mind, I guess I'll show you 2 ways to do this. We're going to take down our paper after, and you're going to lose a little bit of the edge of the paper. So you want to make your backing paper a little bit bigger than you want for your final print. This will make sense after when I show you how to tape it down. So first thing you want to do is wet your backing paper. What I like to do is mist my paper and then wrap it in the garbage bag while I set up everything else. So do both sides. You can do more than one piece at a time. So don't feel like you have to spray one, then get everything ready, then come back and spray the next one. If you want to, you can do a whole bunch. And then wrap them up, and you're ready to go. You want to make sure you have a registration sheet if you want your image to be square on the paper. If not, you can eyeball it. And then a piece of mylar to go on top of the registration sheet, like so. That's set up for you. And then you'll need a piece of mylar that's a little bit bigger than your print. For the print, usually when I print and I go do Colle, I trim down the image down to the size of the image or the block. This one's a little bit different because it's a shape block, but traditionally, like if this was a landscape rectangular picture plane, I'd trim it right down to the landscape. Usually there's not a border of Colle paper around the image. But that's up to you. If you want to try that, it might look kind of cool. It's fine, but typically you trim it right down to the image. So you cut a piece of mylar that's a little bit bigger, about 1/8 of an inch bigger on either side. So if, for example, if your print is 8 by 7, then you want to cut your piece of mylar 8 1/8 by 7 1/8. So you want to make it a little bit bigger on each side, each dimension. So 1/8 on each dimension. The reason why we're making it bigger is we're going to wet this paper, and when you wet the paper, it's going to expand. So you want it to fit that piece of mylar. Different types of washi will expand differently. So if you want it like a precise, exact fit to your piece of mylar, then what I usually do is I get a bigger sheet of mylar, I'll wet my paper and put the paper on the mylar and then measure it out from there. Then I know the exact size when the paper's expanded and wet. This is kind of a ballpark. Should be pretty close. Let's see. Does that make sense so far? Cool. So think that the glue that we're going to use is rice paste. So this is Yamamoto. I think there's a nori that comes in a smaller container. Both will work. There's also wheat paste that you can use, but I tend to use this, and that's what we're going to use tonight.
Where do you get that?
Hues Art Supply,
Okay,
art placement.
okay.
It's pretty common. The wheat paste is harder to find, probably enough. You can also make your own. Basically, it's just rice starch. So if you take rice and cook it for a long time, you get the starch out of it. You can make your own. This has preservatives in it, so it doesn't go bad. Because if you just cook rice for a long time and then put it in a container and just leave it out in the open, it'll go bad. So you can't eat this even though it's made out of rice. There's stuff in it that prevents it from going rotty, so that's bad for you. So that's what we're going to use. The nice thing about this glue is it's archival, so it's acid free. It's also reversible. So down the line, if you do a Colle and you don't like the backing paper or it gets damaged, you can soak your print, and your print that's on the washi will lift off your backing paper. And you can re-Colle it, or if you don't want to Colle it anymore and just have it on the sheet, you can do that. So it's reversible, and it's acid free. So when it comes out of the tube, it's fairly thick, almost like a toothpaste consistency. That's too thick to brush onto the back of the print. So we're going to loosen it up with some water. So I usually have a bowl. Just use a spray bottle and a fancy brush. Doesn't have to be that fancy. Actually, these are kind of, the bristles kind of come off pretty easily. So. But you can get really nice Colle brushes. that costs hundreds of dollars.
Really?
Yeah. Or you can use a paintbrush. But those brushes are really nice. So you just want to thin it down a little bit. So still have some body to it. I know what the comparison would be. Moving from toothpaste to not quite a cold maple syrup. It's hard to see on the camera. Kind of like it's still fairly thick, but it's looser and it's easier to brush on. Like that. The gel. As you can see, so it's not as thick. It's still pretty thick. And you kind of give it a quick spray every once in a while just to keep it from drying out. Alright, so now I'm going to wet my print from the back. And then before I do that, I'm going to put my piece of mylar on the front. It's like this, and then spray it. So, on the center. Like so. The paper's quite translucent. So make sure you got the print face down. It's hard when it's wet like this to tell which is which. And this has happened a number of times where I've put the back side of the paper down, the reverse side, and it doesn't stick. And I can't figure out why, and I get really frustrated. And then I realize I've stuck the print ink side down on the paper, or tried to. So that happens, that's okay. Correct word. So again, we want our paper just damp. So we can take a microfiber cloth, gently blot the paper. And then we can put that here. And then we're going to apply the rice paste. So I'll give another quick spray. And you want to start in the center and work your way out. Usually I do this with a piece of newsprint underneath it or mylar. I'm just doing it on the garbage bag so I'm not getting glue in my printing area. So, and then with another microfiber cloth, you want to blot the excess glue. So you don't need very much glue, just a thin layer. If there's too much glue, when we go to glue it, it could squish out. And the glue actually stains the backing paper, so if that happens, you have to get a new piece. demonstration sheet like so. So the paper is quite wet, so you want to blot it dry with some newsprint. You just want to blot it so there's no shiny spots on the paper. So make sure it's still damp but not sopping wet. There's no shiny spots. And you put that down like so. Piece of newsprint on top, and then basically apply pressure just as we're printing. Hopefully. Egyptian clay. So now the paper is wet or damp. And you leave it out, it's going to start warping. So what I like to do is tape it down to a board. You could weigh it down as well. I find you get flatter prints this way. Like to do. So if you're going to tape it from the front, then when you plan out your shin Colle, one, make sure you give yourself a little bit extra on the backing paper, because when you tape it down and then take the tape off after, you'll leave a tape mark around your print, and that'll have to be cut or torn away. If you don't want to waste paper or you're working within a certain size, then what you can do is actually flip it over and then tape from the back. You'll still get a tape mark, but it's on the back, so you won't see it from the front. And if you're okay with that, then that's totally fine. And that way you don't have to worry about tearing a tiny little piece of paper. Especially if you're working with like a suite or something, you're trying to use as much of the paper as possible. Like you're taking a sheet of rag paper and cutting into eighths, then you can just, when you're doing shin Colle, then you can tape it from the back, rather than having to get two sheets to make up for the difference. So for taping down your print, I like to use, I call it fiber tape. If you go to Home Depot or Rona, they call it filament tape. It's basically really strong tape that has little pieces of fiberglass in it.
So do your hands get itchy from handling it?
No. No, it's embedded in the tape, so
Okay.
you won't feel it. So when you tape it down, you want about half on the paper and half on the board.
So the green painter's tape wouldn't do the job, because it wouldn't stick to
No.
the-
It's not strong enough.
Okay, gotcha.
So as the paper dries, it'll contract, but because we tape down the edges, it'll contract nice and tight, and it'll flatten. So usually overnight should do it.
Is that tape expensive?
Kinda, depending where you go. I'll have some here for everyone to use. I tend to bulk order mine from Uline. They're like a shipping company. So I'll just buy a big box of it and then I'm good for a while. I think last time was a little bit harder to find in stores. If you don't have this, you can use watercolor tape. I don't know if anyone's used that before. It's a brown paper tape with an adhesive on the other side, and the adhesive activates with water. So you tear pieces of the watercolor tape, wet the one side with the adhesive, and then put it down, and then same idea, half on the paper, half on the board. It works really well and it's quite strong, and it works great for damp paper. Sometimes with this fiber tape, it will lift if the paper's too wet. The watercolor tape doesn't do that, but it's really hard to get off the boards after. Like it's stuff. You have to,
Watercolor tape.
yeah, watercolor tape, yeah. This stuff you peel off and you can use the board right away, kind of thing.
Watercolor you'd have to cut.
You have to cut, and then you have
it's on
to
the board.
scrape the board and scrub it. And
So this is better.
I prefer this, but for larger prints, I'd probably go with the watercolor tape, just because it is stronger. But, so after you put the tape down on the fork edges, you want to make sure it's really stuck on, so you burnish it. I have a fancy tool called a burnisher that's curved on one end they can use. If you don't have a burnisher, you could use like a kitchen spoon. When I was starting out in school, I didn't have a burnisher, so I just carry a spoon in my pocket and it would work. So you just want to make sure it's really stuck down. Make sure you get that edge of the paper like that. And let it sit usually overnight. And then you can take the tape off and you're good to go. And that's string Colle.
Will your paper still be a bit damp when you take the tape off?
No,
No?
everything should be dry.
Okay.
And because we sprayed the paper, we didn't like put it in the sink. It shouldn't take too long to dry. So overnight should be fine. If you find the paper is still kind of cool, really cool to the touch, probably means it's still damp, and just leave it on for a little bit longer.